On a flight from New York to Los Angeles, a white passenger suddenly demands that a well-dressed black man be removed from first class. But when he pulls out his FBI badge, what happens next will leave you speechless. A plane was almost silent as it cruised through the skies, but the calm was shattered by an unexpected outburst from a white woman sitting in first class. She suddenly screamed, pointing her finger at the man beside her. "He doesn't belong here," she shouted, her voice filled with disgust. "He needs to be removed, now!" Malcolm Johnson, dressed in a tailored black suit, was seated in 1A. To the untrained eye, he looked like just another businessman. A man with sharp features, well-groomed, carrying an elegant briefcase. What no one knew was that inside the briefcase, concealed in the smooth leather, was his most important identification, an FBI badge. Malcolm wasn't just any passenger on this flight. He was an undercover FBI agent traveling to Los Angeles for a covert mission. But at that moment, he wasn't thinking about his mission. He wasn't thinking about his badge, the weight of his job, or the harsh reality of being a black man in America. He was just a man on a plane trying to get to his destination. The woman in 2B, however, had other ideas. She glared at him, clearly uncomfortable, her fingers drumming on the armrest. Without warning, she slammed the button above her seat, summoning the flight attendant. "Yes, ma'am? Is there a problem?" the young flight attendant asked, hurrying over. "This man," the woman spat, her face contorted in disgust, "does not belong in first class. I demand he be removed immediately." The flight attendant blinked in confusion, but quickly recovered. "Ma'am, this gentleman has a first-class ticket just like you." The woman shook her head vehemently. "No, this is a mistake. A man like him doesn't belong here. He's just not supposed to be in first class." The tension in the air grew thicker as other passengers turned to look. Malcolm's eyes remained calm, his hands folded neatly on his lap. The flight attendant hesitated, but then spoke with more authority. "Ma'am, I assure you, his seat is correct. There's no mistake here." But the woman was relentless. "I don't care. Either he goes, or I will. Call security." Malcolm could feel the weight of the moment. He took a deep breath, feeling the familiar tension building inside him. But he remained calm. Without a word, he reached into his jacket pocket, slowly pulling out his wallet. The woman flinched, her eyes wide with suspicion. He slowly slid out something metallic from his wallet. It gleamed in the light, catching the attention of everyone around him. The woman froze as she saw the golden badge in his hand. Malcolm held it up and said, "Ma'am, I'm a federal agent." There was a moment of stunned silence. The flight attendant's eyes widened, and the woman's face turned pale as she stumbled over her words. You're a what?" the woman stammered, unable to comprehend what was happening. Malcolm flipped the badge towards her, making sure she could clearly see the letters FBI. He leaned in slightly and lowered his voice. "You just tried to have a federal agent removed from this plane." The woman's face turned crimson as she realized her mistake. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Malcolm's gaze was unwavering as he stared at her. "You attempted to remove me simply because of the color of my skin." The woman sank back into her seat, her pride shattered. Malcolm continued, his voice calm but firm. "Do you still want to call security?" The flight attendant, clearly nervous now, cleared her throat. "Sir, is everything okay?" Malcolm gave a small smile. "It is now." The woman said nothing more, her face still burning with shame. She kept her eyes fixed firmly on the seat in front of her, not daring to look at Malcolm again. Malcolm then turned to the other passengers, his voice steady. "This isn't just about me. This happens every day to people who don't have a badge to pull out." A young black girl sitting a few rows back whispered to her mother, "Mommy, he's a hero." The mother smiled and nodded. "Yes, sweetie, he really is." As the flight attendants made their final checks, Malcolm leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes. He didn't just fly to Los Angeles today, he had made a statement. The engines roared as the plane ascended into the sky, leaving JFK Airport behind. But the tension remained in the first-class cabin. Malcolm remained alert, his mind sharp despite the calming surroundings. He could sense the discomfort radiating from the woman beside him. She shifted in her seat, her arms tightly crossed. She was trying to shrink into herself, hoping he would forget what had just transpired. But Malcolm hadn't forgotten. He couldn't, and he wasn't about to let it slide. As the flight continued, the tension between Malcolm and the woman beside him remained palpable. Her discomfort was obvious, but Malcolm remained silent, allowing her to stew in her own shame. Soon, another flight attendant, a tall man with a serious look, approached the woman in 2B. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said politely, but there was an unmistakable firmness in his voice. "The captain has been informed about your behavior. When we land in Los Angeles, security will escort you off the plane for further questioning." The woman's face drained of all color, her eyes widened in disbelief. She began to stutter. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just—" The flight attendant didn't flinch. "You falsely accused another passenger, which caused a disruption. That's considered disorderly conduct. The airline takes this matter very seriously." The woman glanced around, hoping someone would come to her defense, but no one did. The passengers around them remained silent, the earlier whispers now gone. A man in the row in front of them shook his head and turned back to his book. No one seemed willing to support her. "You'll have to explain your actions when we land," the flight attendant said. "If you continue to resist, this will be considered a criminal matter." The woman's lips trembled, and she sank back into her seat, clutching the armrest as if it were the only thing keeping her from falling apart. "This is ridiculous," she muttered under her breath. Malcolm smirked. "No, it's accountability." The flight attendant gave him a small nod before turning back to the woman. "You'll be escorted off the plane as soon as we land. I suggest you remain calm until then." As the attendant walked away, Malcolm glanced at the woman one last time. He could see the defeat in her eyes, but he wasn't done with her. Not yet. "So," Malcolm said calmly, his voice low but steady, "what happens now?" The woman froze, her fingers tightening around the fabric of her sweater. She didn't want to answer him. Malcolm waited for her to say something, anything, but she remained silent. He wasn't about to let it go. "You called for security. You wanted me off this plane because of my skin color." The woman's face flushed with shame. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Malcolm leaned forward slightly. "You looked at me, a man in a suit, and assumed I didn't belong. But my ticket says otherwise." The woman turned her face away, staring out the window, refusing to acknowledge him. She had no words left. But as the plane began its descent toward Los Angeles, Malcolm knew that he had made a difference. Not just in the woman's mind, but in the minds of everyone who had witnessed the event. Sometimes justice doesn't come with a courtroom or a jury. Sometimes it comes in the form of a quiet, powerful statement. As the plane touched down in Los Angeles, the cabin was filled with the sound of the seatbelt signs turning off, the hum of passengers unbuckling their seatbelts. But the woman in 2B remained motionless, her eyes fixed ahead, her hands still gripping the armrests. Malcolm, however, was already standing, collecting his things. He had no time to dwell on her or the situation. His work wasn't over. As he made his way to the exit, a flight attendant approached him, her expression now more respectful than before. "Mr. Rivers," she said, her voice quieter than before, "thank you for your patience. If there's anything we can do to assist you upon arrival, please don't hesitate to let us know." Malcolm nodded, offering a small smile. "I appreciate it." His gaze flickered toward the woman, still sitting in her seat, looking like she was trying to disappear into the upholstery. As Malcolm exited the plane and stepped into the jet bridge, he felt the weight of the experience settle inside him. This wasn't just about him. It was about something much bigger. It was a moment of accountability, a reminder that people need to answer for their actions, and that sometimes all it takes is one person standing up for what's right to spark change. Outside the terminal, as he made his way to the airport exit, Malcolm's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at it quickly, recognizing the familiar number. It was his boss, a short, to-the-point message. "Good job today. We're proud of you." Malcolm smiled to himself as he typed a quick reply. "Thanks, but this is just another day on the job." He knew that the fight for justice wasn't always going to be easy, but it was a fight worth fighting. And for Malcolm Rivers, that fight was just beginning. As he stepped out into the bright Los Angeles sunshine, Malcolm knew that in some small way he had made a difference today. And that was enough.